Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today we meet on the lands of the Noongar people, and I'd like to take a moment to pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. I'd also like to acknowledge their survival and their resilience and their experiences of extreme trauma. I'd like to acknowledge all the people who've helped me on my journey to learn to be resilient after extreme trauma. And you may notice that my presentation is R-rated, contains violence, coarse language, occasional sexual reference, but relax, there will be absolutely no nudity. That said, it may touch tender parts of you due to your own experiences, the experiences of your friends or those around you. If that happens, please seek support from your existing support networks, or if your need is more immediate, see the event organisers today. Now I'm going to share a lot about me. Got to say, it feels a bit vulnerable. So I want to get to know you a little bit first. Told you there'd be no nudity, so don't get too scared. Can you raise your hand for me if you have insurance? Quite a few, thank you. How many of you have car insurance? Awesome. Health insurance? Fabulous. Life insurance? A few less, but still a good majority. Thank you. Now, who actually thinks something horrible is going to happen? Just a couple. Thank you for being honest. Not many of us, like you, or the majority of you, I've got insurance, but I never, ever, ever imagined that anything horrible would ever happen. But something horrific, terrifying, life-changing did happen. It happened to my children. It happened to me. It happened to our families and our communities. I was 24. My estranged husband stalked, harassed and intimidated me for a period of 18 months before taking it upon himself to end the lives of our children, to attempt to take mine and end his own. That's right, 24, no kids, lost my right leg. Anybody seen it? Let me know. I lost my identity. I lost my goals, my dreams, my direction. Who was I now? And as I lay there in my hospital bed, I thought and I wondered, and I'd like you to imagine just for a moment, what would you do? I had no idea. But I quickly realised that if I did nothing, I would drown in this nothingness, in this abyss. And with the help of people around me, I was fortunate enough to actually be able to find my courage and hold it along with my fear and just begin to take the next step. Reaching in for my inner hero and doing that helped me to understand this challenge was going to be a long one and I needed my strength and my resilience. But at school I'd been told, you start something, you've got to finish it. But in this journey, I had to rethink, I had to change my thinking. Because I couldn't fix it, I couldn't change it. So I had to give myself permission to change direction. So just taking that, beginning to move, I started to realise that the next thing I needed to do was get organised because I hadn't actually been prepared for this trip. So I set about learning to walk, learning, how to survive, where was I going to live? How was I going to earn money? Who was I going to be? That food, that shelter, that safety. And let me tell you, the safety was exceptionally hard. Who would ever love me? Where did I belong? And as I set about trying to organise these things so that I knew who I was and where I was going, and that could feel stable and not continuously wobbly, it took a lot of energy. It was hard, but luckily I had people around me to help me. And I had to keep moving, and I had to keep moving, but I didn't recognise anything around me. I realised I'd been picked up and thrown into this world that I knew nothing about. I had all this baggage, I had all this luggage that I was carrying with me, and I needed to understand it. I needed to understand what had happened. What was this place I'd landed in called? What were these emotions I was feeling? How was I actually going to ever master any of the stuff that was happening for me? So I started to learn about this world called trauma and the emotions that come with it, the shame, the blame. I don't think I mentioned that not only had this happened to me, but a huge portion of the community blamed me for it. If I hadn't have left, if I had have loved him, or if I had have stayed, this wouldn't have happened. So I felt very rejected. I felt very blamed. Often there were bouts of anger. There was confusion. But I kept my fear and I kept my courage. And I just kept taking the next step. And as I went, I started asking people, do you know where we are? Do you know what this place is called? Do you know how I should actually negotiate the next bit? Off I went to the library, I got books. I went back to school, having been the high school dropout. Lo and behold, I actually ended up at university, got an honours degree in social work, went on to do a PhD. I searched and searched and searched, and I asked everyone around me. I met people with lived experiences of trauma as well, and we learnt from each other. I met academics. I taught them, they taught me. On and on I went until finally, some 20 years later, I started to understand, and figure out how to put all of this together. How did I take this concept and make it really easy for the rest of the world who were living it and who weren't living it to understand? How could we make my experience meaningful to all those people who stopped and asked me and said, Anne, if you can do this, I know I can get through what I need to get through. And let me tell you, while that's very flattering, it's also a lot of bloody pressure. Whoa, what do you expect me to know? So I came to understand that traumatic events are events that are experienced as hurtful and harmful. And the effect of those events are long-lasting, and they impact on our capacity to function, our well-being, our physiology, and as we're starting to learn increasingly, even our brain function and the way that our brain forms at different times. So I started, I understand what trauma is. Now, how can I make a mud map of this landscape? How can I make this meaningful so that people have hope and can maintain hope? How can I track the landmarks we walk past? Not all of us will, depending on which type of trauma we've experienced. So as simple as this might seem, this concept of trauma recovery being a journey has 20 odd years of hard-earned blood, sweat and tears that go into it. So when I meet someone now and they say, Anne, where am I? I'll say, well, you used to be up here with your insurance thinking nothing's ever going to happen. But lo and behold, you're now here. And first of all, we have to get the basic things for you. In that first month, there's a lot of people, they're going to help you, they're going to come in, they're going to chock up your little milking stool of basic needs so it doesn't wobble too much. In the next sort of 11 months, they're going to help you to try and learn how to restructure it and get some sort of stability to the basic needs that you've got. And after that, society pretty much says, you're on your own now. And I think the rest of society, and me included until it happened to me, was like I was on this 12-month visa, That's what was stamped in my passport. I didn't want to be in this place in the first place. But if I had to be here, okay, 12-month visa. After that, I'll sort out the court, I'll get the inquest over, I'll sort out the life insurance, I'll manage to get, his superannuation paid out. But it didn't go back to how it was. And there was this point in my journey, and I help people to understand that point in their journeys, where you can't actually turn back. It's not going to go back to how it was. You're actually in indefinite detention or a detainee. You can struggle with that. You can flail in the abyss of nothingness. And many people do because they don't have the resources. They don't have people to help them get those basic things in life. They don't have capacity. Or you can survive. You might have the basics. But do you actually manage to grow and thrive? So sort of having this mud map helps most people understand there's a lot of work we can do in the preventative space. Up there when we've got insurance, that doesn't prevent things from happening, so we have to do more in that. We need to do more in the first responders, the sort of intervention, but then this great big space of postvention. How do we hold people on that journey? How do we sustain them? And how did I sustain myself was a question a lot of people asked me. I didn't really know. So this pilgrim in me had to think about it. What do pilgrims do? They go on long journeys. They learn how to make meaning of it. So for me, I learnt to share with people the meanings that I'd made and the things that had helped me keep going. I guess the most simple one was that if I sat there and looked at what had happened to me, I'd never think about what I could do with what had happened to me. I also realised, as my hero was going, that if the hero kept seeing problems rather than opportunities, I was going to get stuck again. And I guess anyone who knows me at all will know I'm pretty straight to the point. So I came up with this concept, and it occurs to me when I talk to people at the very beginning of their journey. It's a powerful way for them to think about it. Who here knows the expression, the shit we go through? Yeah, I did warn you about the language. Well, the shit we go through today is actually the fertiliser that can help us to grow and blossom. But if we don't stop and examine how we're looking at this pile of shit that's in front of us, we're just going to smell it. It's going to stink. It sucks. I don't want that. No. But how many of you go down to the garden store and purchase fertiliser? So, if you take your pile of poo and you place yourself in it, nothing really happens. You have to keep moving, you have to add water, you have to add light to keep that seed so it can actually grow. And at the beginning of our journeys in this landscape of trauma, we often don't have capacity to keep going. We need people to give us water, to give us light, to help us in that space. We need people to help us actually, think bigger and become the organiser and then the pilgrim. And eventually, if we can do that, then we will manage to turn surviving into thriving through the use of hope. My wish for you is that no matter how big or small, because my problem is pretty big, it was a pretty big pile of poop, yep. But it doesn't have to be such a big pile of poop for us to be everything that we can be. So may you always, each and every one of you, thrive on your journeys and help other people to thrive on theirs. Thank you.